But first, this issue in WA, it's unnerving farmers and farming communities right across the country. Say goodbye to private property rights as new Aboriginal cultural laws come into effect from the 1st of July, requiring farmers to pay an Aboriginal consultant $160 an hour to get a permit to do anything on their land that might disturb more than 50 centimetres of soil. Now that's digging a fence hole or planting trees, clearing tracks or more. The new laws won't just affect the owners of big cattle stations or graziers. Anyone in more than 1,100 square metres is affected. Now that's a big suburban block in a place like Perth. Penalties are big too. For individuals, $25,000 up to $1 million. For companies, $250,000 up to $10 million and jail time. This is a truly unprecedented expansion of red tape, which costs the economy every year $176 billion, by the way. And you can expect it'll get much worse if the voice gets up. Thomas Mayo, we've played that tape, pay the rent, he says, for what he considers farmers living on his land. But those farmers in the West aren't going down without a fight. Joining me now to discuss all of this, President of the West Australian Pastoralists and Grazers Association, Tony Seabrook. He's leading the petition. His petition's already had 29,000 signatures, making it one of the biggest in the country. Well, I tell you what, it's extraordinary. Thank you for your time, Tony. It's extraordinary that you're in this situation. Tell me why farmers like you are so concerned about these new laws.
Look, there's a madness sweeping the West at the moment. We've got a government that has all the powers of a dictatorship. There's nothing we can do about it. They hold the House to ransom. They do whatever they darn well like. And this piece of legislation is just it's a classic signal to all of us that we have a government that's not listening. So look, I'd suggest that 30,000 signatures on a petition in less than 2 weeks, no advertising, not a cent spent, is a clear message to the Premier that we are deeply concerned about what you're doing here. It's vastly overreaching. It may be a bit of a response to what happened at Juukan Gorge, but mate, we don't need this legislation. We really don't. We're farmers. We want to go farming.
So give us a practical sense. I made the point about 50 centimetres. It's not much to go down for a farmer just to run their property. But that's the draconian catch, the net you're caught in with this. And the issue I heard an Aboriginal elder talking about is that you're going to require these permits, but most of these localised elder groups and organisations haven't even been established. How that's supposed to work in a couple of weeks' time, I've got no idea.
Yeah, but it is so badly prepared. There's nothing in place. None of the things we need are there. And look, to be fair, it doesn't encompass everything. They're saying like for like, but they're peddling with snake oil a piece of legislation that they're prepared to spend $100 million on implementing. Now, if we ought not to be worried, $100 million is enough to make anybody become gravely concerned. Now, if I do like for like, which is sow the same bit of crop or everything the same as before, I'm pretty safe. But we don't do that. We're a progressive industry. We're always moving forward. The gear gets wider, the harvesters get bigger. We need to fill in the gullies. We need to pick up the rocks. We need to do so many things that are not like for like. And for a farmer to embark upon something like that, he must first of all do something that's called due diligence. Now, none of us are totally certain what due diligence actually means. But after you've done due diligence, then you may feel concerned that maybe you could get yourself into trouble. So then you actually apply to your local LARC. These don't exist at the moment. And for a fee, as you said, they will come out on my property or anyone else's property to determine whether Aboriginal culture and heritage actually exists. Now, this is an unbelievably immeasurable, an unquantifiable statement. It can be a landscape, it can be a watercourse, it can be any darn thing. And it also says in the legislation that just because a determination has been made to say there's no Aboriginal culture and heritage present, it doesn't mean that at some point in the future it may not be deemed to be there. So it's dangerous.
Yeah, let me just jump in there because I think that is critical. So first of all, it's not defined what this significance might be. What's significant to one cultural Aboriginal community, if you're farming a place further out of that jurisdiction, let's say, in another community run by another Aboriginal group, what you do up there might be okay, what you do down here might not be okay. But the point that you could do something with approval of the mob that governs that area, and then find down the track they say, well, hang on, no, there's a different spirituality in that land, and you get caught out down the track.
And Peter, that's exactly the risk here. It's what we're trying to point out to the Premier. The bland things that he's saying, nothing to see here, nothing to worry about, everything goes on as normal. He either hasn't read his own legislation and doesn't understand it, or he's lying. Now, one or the other. But to come out with this sort of bold statement that a 30,000 signature petition is meaningless and counts for nothing, this is just scratching the surface of where we are. Now, they've conducted what I'm going to call re-education programs around the wheat belt. About 1,500 people, I think, have turned up to be re-educated. It hasn't gone down very well, huge amount of opposition. So he's bashing on. And he's bashing on the basis that he has said this is a co-design process. I don't know who he co-designed it with, but he certainly didn't co-design it with the people that are out here farming where I'm farming.
Yeah, I want to pick up that point too. You've got big crowds turning up. You've got a petition that I've never seen a petition like that in 2 weeks get those sorts of numbers. I think the point you made at the top is really important here. There is no opposition in Western Australia. There's 2 men and a dog in terms of the coalition in the lower house. I can't recall this being much of a feature going into the election. I can't recall even much debate when the legislation went through the parliament. It seems like it's just come from nowhere.
It has come from nowhere. They'll say it was being hatched over a long period of time. I don't think any of us thought it was actually serious. We didn't think that this would actually happen. We understand that the leasehold country, which is our pastoral estate in WA, is in a more vulnerable position. But on freehold land, hell's bells. I mean, we've been here for 7 generations. It's my farm. I've paid for it. I pay the rates on it. I do an enormous amount of land care. I care for it. Now I have to go and seek the permission of people that have a very limited understanding of what I do to continue to develop my farm. It's blindsided everybody, and I don't understand how on earth the government ever thought this was a good idea.
Do you think it's going to impact property values in Western Australia, Tony?
Look, they'll go gently. In the beginning, they'll go gently. Then the thumb screws will quietly come out, and more people will come up against what's at play here. Yes, it will cost. There's no shadow of doubt it will cost agriculture. It will cost mining in the same way that the Mabo decision and land rights, for what it's delivered, let's be honest about it, it has actually cost us hundreds of billions of dollars to have the system in place. And the Pastoral Graziers Association is embedded in agriculture here. We are still dealing with over 45 claims since the 1993 declaration. And these things are still not being cleaned up, and it's 30 years on. So it's easy to sweep it under the carpet and say, don't worry about it. But it's there, it is impacting, and this is the greatest assault on private property rights in freehold land since Federation. Simple as that.
I 100% agree with you. I reckon farmers right around the country watching tonight, farming communities, it's not just the farmers will be concerned. We'll be thinking, come the voice, this is coming to their state and their farm, their community, and not just in WA. Just quickly before we go, are you going to fight this all the way through? Like once you get to 1 July, if he doesn't change his mind,
I would say without any shadow of doubt, there are other Labor governments all over Australia watching here to see what might come about and how they might in some way address this issue along the same lines. I found out a very disturbing thing today. I could flick my fingers and get 8,000, 9,000, 10,000 people in front of Parliament House that are absolutely ropeable. We've got 450 pastoral leaseholders. We've got 5,500 serious farmers that are going to be impacted and 60,000 small landowners. Now, what I found out today, that we don't have a freedom of right of assembly. I have to actually get a permit to hold a rally outside Parliament House, and my name would be on that permit. So if some rowdies turned up and wrecked the place, wrecked the gardens or damaged the property, if it got out of control, then I will actually be sued, or the association will be. So this freedom of assembly, we could put a hell of a protest together, but with someone's name on the front of it, you're in the gun. And so I don't know what to do now. We were planning on doing something much more aggressive than just a petition, but when I consider the liability that's attached to having a public demonstration, we're stymied.
That's how they shut you down. Right, you come on here and use this as your. You come on here and use this as your public platform anytime, Tony. Good luck.
I appreciate that. But
stay across the issue. Thank you for
talking. I had a meeting with David Anderson, ABC, a little while ago, and I said, David, country people are bolted on ABC. They're walking away in droves, mate. They're walking away. They're done with your left-wing ABC. And I asked him a simple question. I said, I can name for you half a dozen, maybe a dozen left-wing journos that you've got there. You give me one that in any way espouses the values that Sky does. Just one. And at that point, he shook his head and walked away. Just couldn't answer the question. So, look, it's great to see you guys there.